The Elder Fire is the original luminous principle envisioned as a generational lineage of vibrant ancestors burning bright in the distant past, as the radiating sun and the pulsating glow of the oldest stars, as the flame found in the sacred heart, the eldest emanation of the light itself. Welcome to the Elder Fire Podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Elder Fire Podcast. This is your host, Ramon Castellanos, and I want to share my gratitude for you being here today. And if you're listening to this at the end of 2025, near the winter solstice and Saturnalia, I want to wish you happy holidays. With that said, we have a very special episode here today. And if you stick it out the whole way through and really listen to it, you're going to go through quite an intense experience in my estimation. And that probably shouldn't come as a surprise considering the name of the episode. And in fact, recording this was in and of itself a little bit of a peak experience for me. And you'll see why if you listen all the way through. But I need to give a little bit of context for this particular episode. It's actually a direct excerpt from my new book, In Praise of the Wild Spirit, How to Rewild 21st Century Humans. Now, this book is near and dear to my heart because I worked on it for years and put a lot of myself and sacrificed a lot of myself to bring it into the world. And I can say this without ego, but I promise you, there is no other book in the world like this. It is entirely unique and could have only been written by me because of my unique life experiences. And to be honest, I didn't write it by myself. A big part of it came through as a direct transmission from deep time ancestors, which were not easy to contend with, I promise you, because the energy that came through was very intense, and it took a lot of concerted effort to transmit it into something that is both mythic as well as tactical and rigorous. So with that said, I want to share with you a little bit of the context because it'll be important to understand as you progress through this podcast. The book itself is told in the context of a metaphor, and the metaphor is this: that domestication is a kind of pathogen. One could say it's either viral or parasitic, and it has infiltrated the earth and has been converting everything that it touches to be carriers of the domestic. So it alters the landscape, it alters the biology it encounters to make it more receptive to domestication. And we can see this in the way the world has changed. And what we call rewilding is an impulse that is much like an immune response that comes from something deep within to this particular pathogen. And in that, we have a kind of consciousness war. And this war has been raging across the earth for thousands of years, and we have seen it in the eradication of indigenous people and indigenous lifeways, as well as the destruction of many different ecologies and the eradication and extinction of quite a few species of animals as a result of this process. And at this point, we're also noticing how it's coming to a peak in 2025, this domesticative current. And at the same time, rewilding is growing because we are in the fevered state now, my friends. And this is also mapped with my time spent at Wild Spirit Wolf Sanctuary. So part of what happens is that we take the metaphor of the dog, the wolf, and the wolf dog, which is a mix of both wild and domestic traits, and we work with them as the power animals of the overall metaphor, of the overall book. So the dog represents our domestic nature, the wolf represents our wild nature, And the wolf dog is the merging of the two that can happen, and that in a sense has to happen for humans who exist within domesticity, but also are capable of calling back some of their wildness. So this book is not about shunning away the domestic, it's about finding wildness inside of it. And now, because this book frames the overall process as an immune response against a pathogen, it moves into a protocol, one could say, that starts with inoculations. And inoculations are basically a vaccine. And that's when you take in a piece of the pathogen in order to develop what we call our adaptive immunity, our ability to adapt to the pathogen. And the next section is called prophylactics. And a prophylactic agent is something that strengthens your innate immunity in a general way in order to make it more robust. And in this context, it means to strengthen our innate wildness so that it is fundamentally already more robust against this domesticative pathogen. And that's where this podcast fits in. It's in the prophylactic portion of the book. And then the last chapter of the book is called Wolf Dog Medicine, which talks about how to find that dual citizenship, so to speak, of both the wild and the domestic in the modern world. And what makes this particular podcast so special is what we find in the middle of it. And that is why I chose this particular excerpt from the book. What will happen is that we're going to go back into the deep past in order to follow a band of hunter-gatherers through a hunt. And this hunt is for a very dangerous and very large animal. And right in the middle of the podcast, in the peak of it, we will encounter the origin of the human capacity for peak experience within this story of these hunters. And I just felt so moved to share this in this particular format, this podcast, The Elder Fire, which mixes music and sound effects and timing and rhythm to create a sonic adventure. And this, my friends, is a sonic adventure. And with that said, I want to invite you to purchase it, to read it, and to apply it. And you can find the link for this wherever you've heard this podcast. And if someone happened to have shared it with you, then you can just find it on Amazon. Just type in the name In Praise of the Wild Spirit, How to Rewild 21st Century Humans, and it should pop up for you. And now, getting the book does go a long way towards supporting me and the work that I do here, and to keeping this podcast alive and feasible, because a lot of energy goes into it. Some of these podcasts can easily take from start to finish, if you include the writing, like 30 or 40 hours of work. So, with that said, if you do want to support this podcast, getting the book is an awesome way to do that. If you listen to this and you're not quite ready to get the book, but you felt moved anyway, you can send a one-time donation, and you can find the link for that also below. And just to let you know, this is an aspect, an arm, so to speak, of the bigger work that I do, which is called Eating Ancient Virtue. And if you want to stay connected to what I do and join my email list, which gives you an ability to stay connected to everything I release, you can find that at eatingancientvirtue.substack.com. And with that said, my friends, let's get started. Dangerous play. To live dangerously means to live. If you don't live dangerously, you don't live. Living flowers only in danger. Living never flowers in security. It flowers in adventure. Those who are courageous go headlong. They search all opportunities of danger. Their life philosophy is not that of insurance companies. Their life philosophy is that of a mountain climber, a glider, a surfer. Risk is the only guarantee of being truly alive. From Osho in his book, Courage, the Joy of Living Dangerously. And now, in the words of Susan Lin, play is the foundation of learning, creativity, self-expression, and constructive problem solving. It's how children wrestle with life to make it meaningful. Dangerous play is an offering to the wild spirit. Individually, both danger and play feed the core aspects of our wild nature. But when alchemically fused together, they create a potent cocktail of prophylactic agents. It is important to tactically define these states to make them workable sacrifices at the altar of the wild. Danger. Danger can be defined as something that is or simply feels consequential. In a word, danger is about risk. There are degrees of danger, of course, from walking fully naked into a Colombian ghetto at night to walking barefoot across sharp rocks that could grievously injure you if you trip and fall. When I mention danger, I suggest leaning towards the latter and not the former. Danger pulls us from our slumber and makes the air we breathe crisp. It demands that we be present. Is it any wonder that a core theme of the modern narrative that authorities always harp upon when they want to control our behavior revolves around safety and quote-unquote minimizing risk?
This is an important message from the United States Department of Labor. Always wear fall protection when you're working 6 feet or more above the ground. This helps prevent falls from heights, ladders, and unstable work surfaces. Osho wants you to be safe.
For the deep ancestors, danger was simply a part of life, as most actions had very real consequences. There are still people who live with this attention today. Consider the many villagers who may have to tango with crocodiles on their daily trek just to gather water for their community. The wilds are full of potential threats, from predators to venomous insects to unpredictable environments. Not only this, but the ancient world had no ICU. Thus, traumatic injury was much more likely to lead to death than it would today. Perhaps one of the most important defenses against this was paying attention. A multi-sensory and multi-dimensional attention that was not only based in the physical, but was just as much based in the subtle energetics of the world. For when small mistakes could lead to death, intuitive capacities tend to flourish, and attunement to all layers of the environment becomes practically extrasensory. Engaging in actions that heightens our awareness, forcing it into the present moment in a manner that is deeply grounded in practical concerns, awakens a wild state. Senses become alive, instincts sharpen, and we are awake. Although there is nothing wrong with having a meditation cushion, and I have one as well and enjoy it very much, thank you, much mindfulness rhetoric revolves around the safe and comfy domain of said cushion. Yet nature nurtures a raw attention that cuts like a knife. This knife-like attention slices a portal in the world that leads to the deep ancestors. Do you recall a time when danger brought you into the present moment and helped you feel more alive than ever? When danger acted as a catalyst that sparked something within that reveled in the experience? This sense of aliveness, awareness, and revelry can erupt just as much if danger is combined with play. Play. In many ways, play requires the opposite state triggered by danger. Danger triggers fight, flight, or freeze responses, whereas play requires a degree of relaxation. A certain lack of consequences is a hallmark of true play. Play is innocent in the best ways, such as expressed in the wondrous joy of a wild child in full flights of fancy. Evolution has woven a propensity towards play into the biology of most life forms. Play is covertly instructive, teaching the organism of movement and social dynamics as well as skill acquisition. Play is a teacher for a pair of wolf pups who exuberantly romp together for the sheer joy of it, and yet at the same time, they rehearse the skills required for hunting. Every pounce on a sibling trains the same pattern used upon prey. We can see play in lizards, fish, birds, and even worms. To play is animal. Wild humans are particularly playful creatures who retain the capacity for playfulness throughout life and well into old age. As Stuart Brown says in his book, Play, How It Shapes the Brain, Opens the Imagination, and Invigorates the Soul, of all animal species, humans are the biggest players of all. We are built to play and built through play. When we play, we are engaged in the purest expression of our humanity, the truest expression of our individuality. Is it any wonder that oftentimes we feel most alive? Those that make up our best memories are moments of play. Play allows for spontaneous and unrehearsed options to emerge from an unknown well of resources. It is in play that many discoveries are made. This is why extreme sports such as skateboarding, snowboarding, or BMX, which are littered with playtime, progress at such astonishing rates. Play is a superpower that is fundamental to a vibrant spirit. To play is wild. Is it any wonder that play is discouraged by the domesticators just as much as danger? Danger and risk are seen as something to avoid as they can only bring destruction. Nearly all of the official definitions of danger present it as uniformly undesirable. Yet, do we not all secretly desire just a little bit of danger? It is enticing, is it not, to transgress boundaries and push edges? Danger can be found in many different ways and does not necessarily require us to face mortal danger. For some, questioning an authority figure, leaving an established familial religion behind that no longer fits, or breaking a sexual taboo is sufficient danger to enliven. While danger is often discouraged, play is either vehemently shut down around anything quote-unquote serious or official, or commodified into competitive sports that generate billions in revenue. When was the last time you saw an adult playing purely for the joy of it, especially without children, simply playing for themselves? Can you imagine raucous play erupting at the heights of Senate, in the middle of a courtroom, or at a board meeting for a major conglomerate? Of course not, because these monuments to domesticity simply can't take that kind of pressure. Dangerous play can be summed up in a single statement: placing skin in the game. When we engage in dangerous play, we can play with consequence or attach consequence to our play. Now, whenever I say danger and play, people immediately imagine specific activities instead of inner states. I want to invite you to orientate as much inwardly as outwardly. What feels like consequential play to you? What brings you into a state in which you are deeply engaged, doing something meaningful to you, and taking at least a little bit of risk? Enough risk to make you pay attention. The opposing nature of threat and relaxation fosters a state where we are fully present, right at the edge of our comfortable capacity, which is also known as flow. Dangerous play is about seeking out deep flow states by taking our play seriously. Deep flow states, ecstasy, and transcendent experiences. Flow is a modern term and is often referred to in modern parlance as the state of peak performance. However, its origins as a state of consciousness are from somewhere in the forest of deep time. We'll explore this in the next section, The Hunt for Peak Experience, where you will see the likely origin of the human capacity for flow. For the moment, it's enough to know that the deep ancestors experience flow often. It's a hallmark of the hunter-gatherer way of life. Flow is used to describe a spectrum of experiences in which one is fully immersed in the present moment. This is a state where nothing else matters but the activity itself, and where one can continue in the activity even if our life is on the line. In fact, putting our lives on the line is one of the fastest ways to enter into deep flow. Being in flow can feel amazing, and it can also be addicting. This is a part of why many extreme sports enthusiasts, combat athletes, and gamblers risk life, limb, and livelihood. The pure rush of the moment. That said, flow occurs in degrees, ranging from light, trance-like states one might experience during an evening stroll, to a fully immersed, ecstatic state of total self-transcendence, such as surfing a 50-foot wave. The latter is what we could call a peak experience. Peak experiences can be approached in many ways, which will be discussed in the section designed for peak experience, and do not require life-threatening circumstances. Moreover, everyone has different capacities and varying degrees of need for such experiences. Finding yours is the key. For humans, flow is more than a state of consciousness or peak performance. It is a need. The lack of consistent access to deep flow states is an evolutionary mismatch, a kind of phantom limb. We are designed for peak experience, and our nervous and endocrine systems never reach full expression without it, like an ember that never becomes a fire. It's worth noting, however, that deep flow is not a frantic state, but a quiet one, a silent one. To quote Stephen Kotler in Stealing Fire, referencing this state of quiet and deep flow, scientists call this shutdown transient hypofrontality. Transient means temporary. Hypo, the opposite of hyper, means less than normal. And frontality refers to the prefrontal cortex, the part of our brain that generates our sense of self. During transient hypofrontality, because large swatches of the prefrontal cortex turn off, the inner critic comes offline. A key feature of flow state is having the sensation of merging into the whole. It's where one can experience the odd mix of embodiment, where the thinking mind dissolves, while also transcending the limitations of an isolated sense of self. This is where subject and object become one, and the ego that considers itself separate gives way to a sense of oneness. In this way, flow is akin to a kind of death practice, for we transcend our individual self to include the broader totality of which we are a part of. I like to think of it as becoming one with the Tao. My teacher, Mushtaq Ali Al-Ansari, who both speaks and writes Sanskrit, has translated the Yoga Sutras into English multiple times, probably just for fun, and has stated in no uncertain terms that the eighth limb of yoga, samadhi, known as the great practice, refers to the flow state. The aim of yoga is to yoke or weave the individual with the whole, and flow does this. In the peak experience I mentioned earlier, the surfer and the 50-foot wave become one. The thinking mind could get the surfer killed as they are gliding over metric tons of rushing water. In other words, deep flow is total engagement with the moment. To quote Osho just one more time, people climb Everest. It is deep meditation. They may or may not understand this. Mountaineering is of great importance. Climbing mountains is dangerous. The more dangerous it is, the more beautiful. You will have glimpses, great glimpses of egolessness. Whenever danger is very close, the mind stops. The mind can think only when you are not in danger. It has nothing to say in danger. Danger makes you spontaneous, and in that spontaneity, you suddenly know that you are not the ego. The thing about deep flow is that it can just as easily emerge in states of meditation as well as war. If we are fully absorbed, then we are in flow. It's as present in freehand mountain climbing as it is in the fully immersive ritual practices of traditional cultures. The flow state spectrum is a range of states that humans have evolved to enter, and it is also a measurable biological state. Flow is so powerful at drawing us into the moment that it even interrupts intense trauma states like those found in PTSD, which is characterized by parts of the nervous system locked in the past. Surf therapy and the pursuit of flow have emerged as powerful approaches for treating PTSD, particularly among veterans and trauma survivors. Studies on programs like Operation Surf and similar initiatives have shown significant reductions in PTSD symptoms, anxiety, and depression following consistent engagement with surfing. Researchers attribute these benefits to the state of flow, the deep embodied immersion that occurs when challenge meets skill or when danger meets play. The experience of flow spans all cultures and all times. It is a part of being human. There may be multiple factors as to why this capacity emerged for us, and there are certainly a diversity of opinions from researchers on the subject. However, a most likely possibility is eons of social hunting. For another feature of flow is that it is all the more powerful in group dynamics, or what some people call group flow. Social hunters like wolves and humans must enter into deep flow with other members of their group to hunt prey as a single unit across distances. In Stealing Fire, authors Stephen Kotler and Jamie Wheel interview a member of the infamous SEAL Team 6. The member claims the training program functions as a filter for recruits who can reliably enter group ecstasy, a state of synchronized, self-transcending flow in which individual egos dissolve and the team operates with a kind of shared mind. The Greek term ecstasis means to stand outside oneself. It serves as the root word for ecstasy and ecstatic, another term for flow. Isn't it fascinating that the underlying intent of the notorious training regimen of the SEALs could be to filter out those who cannot merge? This capacity is not just human, it is also found in other large game pack hunters like wolves. When wolves move as a pack, you can see group synchronization take hold. Individual animals stop acting as isolated entities and begin functioning as a single organism. In the chase, roles shift without command. One wolf herds, another flanks, another waits for the opening, all without a visible signal. Biologists often describe this as cooperative synchronization. The moment when the pack drops into a shared flow state and the hunt becomes something none of them could accomplish alone. The wolves aren't following orders, they're following each other into a deeper pattern of ecstasy. This possibility in nature speaks to harmonics, rhythm, and non-local causality at one level. At another level, we face a glaring reality. The ability for individual animals to hunt as a unit would not be possible without flow, merging, and group coherence. The same is true for humans, one of the most effective pack hunters to walk the earth. Tribal hunter-gatherers have merged with one another for millions of years, and what has been left behind as an heirloom in our biology is an incredible capacity for flow and peak experiences, hunted for by Navy SEALs and mystics alike. Now, I would like to open a portal in the fabric of the world and take you back in deep time, somewhere around 30,000 years ago, to the great motherland of ancient Europe to experience firsthand what it means to hunt for peak experiences. The hunt for peak experience. Somewhere deep in the reservoirs of our ancestral past are the footsteps of tribal humans landing softly against the earth. Steps that listen for sharp rocks, tangled roots, or unexpected depressions. They are totally attuned to the environment around them, noticing the smallest rustle of the leaves or tiny suggestive breaks in the branches. Their five senses are fully engaged with the world around them. There is more, perhaps. Electromagnetic senses, maybe? For they can feel alterations in the subtle flow of energy moving through the landscape. The environment breathes, and they breathe with it. They feel its very heartbeat. As a group, they are quite the sight. They are lean, muscular, and capable. They are draped in animal skins, both to keep them warm and to mask their scent from their quarry. They are covered in a mixture of ash, ochre, and clay, aiding them to blend into the forest around them. They are heading north against a brisk, biting wind and are carrying spears. As they move in search of their kill, they easily follow markings left behind by their prey, and just as easily, their gut-level, instinctually derived signals. A piece of a track here, the eddies of an energetic current there, or the deep rumblings of an intuition honed to a razor's breath. Their systems are open like an organic antenna. They are in touch. From time to time, their heads move in quick rhythmic pulses as they sniff at the winds in search of the musky scent of their prey, a giant cave bear. They advance as a single organism, perfectly synchronized. This hunting party is accustomed to working together, and they have hunted as one unified whole many times. They are kin. No one person is in charge, and the direction they follow is determined in real time by the individual who just knows what the next correct move is. In this way, they are merged and they signal one another further with hand signs and bird calls. Yet they are so synchronized with one another that signals almost seem extraneous at times. They move at a pace that appears slow, and yet the ground they cover makes it seem to the outsider as if they were moving much faster. They glide through the forest like the breeze through the trees. This is their purpose, their craft, and precisely what they desire to be doing at this moment, for they and their family have not eaten in days. This hunt is important. Their prey is dangerous. Yet they revel in the raw aliveness of the moment, for the chase is on. There is no malice in their breast for the bear, but admiration for a being that generates awe in their hearts. For what human being with even a modicum of soul would not feel wonder in the presence of a bear that stands 11 feet tall? They know bear and respect bear, but they must eat, and so must their children. Their respect is not just for the majestic sight of this cave dweller, but for its awesome power in mortal combat. They know they could die soon. Many emotions and sensations mix: hunger, desire, sacrifice, wonder, awe, respect, fear, excitement, group cohesion, and the perpetual trance-inducing state of the forest. They are awash in feeling. They follow signs in the landscape and the faint aromas that mark their path. The hunt continues for hours. It is spring, and times have been lean for both the humans and the bear. The bear they pursue has emerged from its cave after a long hibernation. It is weaker than usual and does not count its odds very high against a group of 9 apex predators with sharp sticks. They continue on and on. The heat of the day has broken, giving way to a slightly cooler afternoon. They continue. Soft, yet strong feet touch the earth with knowing steps. They are so quiet that the only audible sound is their breathing. As they track, every detail matters. Their focus shifts from narrow to broad, from physical to subtle, from intuitive to objective. The process is so intimate that they have begun to feel the bear's consciousness, being as the bear itself as it moves through the dense forest. This allows them to divine what the bear is likely to do next. They speak to the forest and they even speak to the bear, calling it forth to the sacrifice. "Oh, great brother bear, the people need you. We are hungry. Your spirit will be honored." Prayers and hunger have given way to extreme focus. They are near. They feel the pressure and excitement build as proximity closes, but they must remain calm. They have been on the trail for most of the day now. The moon is on the horizon, having given rise to a period of twilight in the sky. Closer still. Now the bear is in a small clearing, breathing as only a giant bear can breathe. It's almost as if the energy of the wind bends around this creature. Something inside the bear has given way to the prayers of the hunter, to the needs of the forest, and to the call that has been given. It knows that its time is approaching, but its instincts are still heightened. Though die it may, it will die as a bear, ready to fight for its life. Wordlessly, each hunter surrounds the bear, taking position. A series of bird calls sound out. The bear knows. Suddenly, all this pressure that has been building for days, all this anticipation in the ritual process of the hunt, all of this hunger erupts forth in an intense flash of action. A series of moments so full of sensation, movement, and impulse that all else disappears but the present moment. Giant claws swing from side to side. Loved ones are in mortal danger, and hunger drives them forward still. At this moment of peak experience, there is revelry. There is deep flow. The members of the pack are all one, and the present is all that exists. Even the sacrificers and the sacrificial become one. Then, a rupture in the fabric of the world occurs as spears pierce vital organs, one after another, until the bear breathes its last breath. The hunters kneel by the bear, and they weep for the immense relief and sudden surge of those emotions giving way to release. The bear spirit is appeased with time-honored prayers, and plants are burned as offerings that may aid its journey through the afterlife. The hunt is successful, having taken the coordinated action of all 9 members to bring down Brother Bear. The animal is butchered and a fire is built. The bear meat cooks on crackling flames, filling the impromptu camp with the aroma of meat over flame, which is intoxicating. 2 days of hunger and an intense hunt breaks like a dam, giving way to a rushing river as the meat is eaten. Bellies are full, no one died, and there will be food for the people. Humans are designed for peak experience. Now, let's step back into 2025 and take stock of our own day-to-day life and compare it to the lives of those hunters. For most of us, the outer intensity of our daily experience comes nowhere near to that, and it doesn't have to. Our lives are not theirs, and we are here and now. What can we learn from this story, though? The kind of experience described in the hunt for peak experience, occurring consistently over millions of years, has, at the very least, helped shape the human being to require peak states of experience in order to feel whole. The intense mix of sensation, physicality, emotion, and desire is a hallmark of the human internal experience because our deep ancestors hunted as a group, as a tribe, as a pack. It's not so much that we need to mimic the precise form, such as hunting a giant cave bear, but that the innate architecture of deep flow, or absorption, is to be engaged to the point of reaching this ecstatic merging with the world that is our birthright. We can all do this if we take the time to explore different avenues. Remember, peak experiences are an anti-domestication prophylactic par excellence. Finding ways to enter into peak experience, deep flow, ecstasy, and absorption, they are all aspects of the same thing, really is a critical medicine for refugees of modernity. So, how do we enter into peak experiences? Practice and practices. If one is to reliably enter into states of deep flow, then developing practices that facilitate it are of paramount importance. Whatever you do, it has to draw you into a state of whole person absorption, in which everything about you becomes the activity, even if just for a few moments. We have been discussing what may seem like a multitude of states: flow, merging, ecstasy, ecstasis, transcendent, and peak experience. In truth, these are different aspects of the same overall process, which is absorption. It is both absorption in the act itself, as experienced by the being that exists within, and to be absorbed by reality itself into its flow. In moments of full absorption, we become one with the whole, and the whole becomes one with us. As we move into the practices I suggest below, I encourage you to orientate towards this energetic pattern: absorption. In yogic parlance, there is a branch of practice called Laya Yoga, which refers to the yoga of absorption. This is a branch of tradition with many different methods that have been in use for centuries, aimed at facilitating deep flow. We will not be going over the methods of Laya Yoga here, but it is a state of absorption pointed to by Laya Yoga that we can work with as a reference point for the underlying intent of the practices that follow. I encourage you to remember this traditional Zen saying as we do. Do not mistake the finger pointing at the moon for the moon itself. Absorption practices. Absorb into dangerous play, preferably in nature. Here, we come full circle to the potent alchemical and ancestrally relevant mix of relaxation and activation, of effort and effortlessness that can draw us into full engagement with the present moment. Pathways we can walk: climbing trees, bouldering, parkour, swimming in wild bodies of water, snorkeling, freediving, surfing, mountaineering, skiing, long hikes, skydiving, and the like. Get into nature and engage in dangerous play. Absorb deeply into physicality. For many of us who are citizens of modern times, deep physicality takes time to develop. It refers to the flow state that emerges from devoted physical cultivation. This is about moving beyond the thinking mind and allowing raw sensation to become the primary driver of conscious experience. Sweat, burn, bliss, release, pain, pleasure, effort, satisfaction, sensation. All of this and more is possible here. This is the body as refuge and sanctuary, housing the wild spirit. Pathways we can walk. Primal and ancestral movement, martial arts, flow yoga, Chinese standing practice or zhangzhuang. Weightlifting, dance, and running may all be used. Absorb into ecstatic sex. Sex and eroticism are potent flow inducers, and for many, they are among the few places where deep flow states arise. Sex treated as a practice, refined over months and years, becomes a powerful source of ecstasy, merging, absorption, and a platform for peak experience. For men, this often requires learning to delay ejaculation so that time spent in sex becomes long enough to induce ecstasy. To really taste the utterly delicious fruit of ecstatic sex also requires the capacity to become multi-orgasmic. For men, this means learning to separate ejaculation and orgasm, an ability spoken about in many old texts. For women, it also means developing the capacity to become multi-orgasmic, learning to ride waves of bliss that crescendo into the next, and opening fully to their partner. Pathways we can walk. There is much to be said about this topic, and considering modernity's wounded relationship to sex, desire, and pleasure, we can safely say that this is a major project, but the rewards are great. My recommendation is to find teachers you trust to help guide you through this process. Absorb into psychedelic states. As this can be quite controversial, I want to state that I am not suggesting you partake in psychedelics. Context and readiness are incredibly critical when it comes to plant medicine. They must be engaged with responsibility. In tribal contexts, plant medicine work occurs in group settings and is facilitated by knowledgeable elders. Many of us do not easily have access to such groups. If you do and feel called to it, there is no doubt that teacher plants can reliably and without conjecture launch you into peak states. Humans have worked with the plant kingdom in this way for tens of thousands of years. Pathways we can walk. I am going to err on the side of placing responsibility for finding these pathways on you. What I can say is that I work with plant medicine on occasion and treat them as sacred teachers. I do not abuse them. Any notes I can offer on the subject are simply that. Absorb into ecstatic dance. Ecstatic dance has become more popular in recent times because it is a reliable deep flow inducer in the proper context. Modern iterations are different from how most traditional cultures engage in ecstatic dance, which was often a codified and stylized tribal practice that everyone performed together. However, this does not need to be an impediment. Ecstatic dance done on your own or in a group is wonderful. Every time I engage in ecstatic dance, I feel connected to the deep ancestors. I feel them moving with me through time. When we enter deep flow in this way, we touch an inheritance of countless rhythms, countless campfires, and countless rituals of dancing humans. Pathways we can walk. Explore ecstatic dance facilitators in your area and join in. Conversely, explore the topic on your own and learn how to craft the experience for yourself. Although ecstatic dance can be refined by skilled facilitators, the core of it is simple. Dance your heart out to the music that moves you until you absorb into the process fully. Absorb into rhythmic chanting. Chanting and toning are age-old human capacities that take us back to the beginning of our species and perhaps to the emergence of primates. To chant and tone is akin to what is referred to as the language of the birds. We sang and intoned long before we spoke in precise, measured words. These roots can be felt reverberating through us when we hear a monkey croaking and huffing. Just as the wolf howls in exuberant expressions, so too can chanting, singing, and toning lead us into peak states. A long session of chanting can take us through a wide range of sensation: challenge, resistance, anger, exhaustion, release, increased energy, bliss, joy, awe, and reverence, all in one session. Pathways we can walk. There are many systems to explore, from Sanskrit's treasury of mantra yoga to Gregorian chanting. My personal practice revolves around Sanskrit mantra, which I've learned from teachers and through self-study. If this path calls to you, the work of Thomas Ashley Ferrand is a solid start. Conversely, you can begin with one of the most recited mantras in the world, invoking Ganesha and auspicious beginnings. Om Gom Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gom Ganapataye Namaha. Om Gom Ganapataye Namaha. Pronunciation is Om Gom Ganapataye Namaha. Typically recited at least 108 times. Absorb into ritual magic. Ritual magic is so pervasive among humans that some anthropologists have gone so far as to call Homo sapiens Homo ritualis. To engage in ritual is human. In fact, the domesticators co-opt this innate ritualistic impulse for their own purposes. Consider how rituals used by governments, puritanical religions, corporations, and big tech creep into your ritual instinct. For example, waking up and checking social media with your morning coffee. A way to combat this is by taking back the magic. I have been blessed to witness high-level ritual in action, as well as the ecstatic states it can trigger. These states can be on par with anything experienced through the other methods mentioned here. Pathways we can walk. I leave this at the feet of the great living traditions of the ancient world, a precious cargo that has flowed through the river of time to reach us here and now. Explore your options, and if one speaks to your heart, take a leap. Taoism, Tantrism, Hinduism, Zen, Tibetan Buddhism, the Ifa and Orisha traditions, and Western grimoire magic are all but a few. In this regard, I leave you with the calling to find ways of entering into deep flow, ecstatic states, and transcendent experiences regularly. And may they help you reabsorb back into the wild spirit. Be well, my friends. Okay, everybody, I hope that you enjoyed listening to this podcast and that in its own way it was a small peak experience for you. And if the work moved you and inspired you and you feel called to go deeper into rewilding, then I encourage you to seek out and purchase the book, In Praise of the Wild Spirit, How to Rewild 21st Century Humans, available on Amazon. Take care.